So a month ago, when Megan and I were meeting as a worship serving unit and discussing what the plans for this service should be, I volunteered to offer some sort of reflections. It felt important to me to acknowledge this national holiday, this celebration or not of 250 years as an American country and empire. And I think I probably had some specific thoughts in my head a month ago, and my typical pattern is to let that sit and ruminate and then usually forget what the specific thoughts were when I volunteered. And then it's, 10 days before, and Gordon came up to me and said, "So is your sermon written?" And I thought, oh, that's a long time away, and then realized it wasn't quite so long away. I have to say that I spend most of my days immersed in thinking about politics and religion to some degree or another, thinking about what it means to live as a person of faith and integrity in these days in America. And I know that there are probably some of you who don't really want to think about or talk about those things here in church, that you want worship to be a place separate from that or apart from the news cycle, and I understand that. And so this maybe isn't the message for you, or maybe it is. What I have come to are some mostly personal reflections, but that I hope might resonate or connect, and that I really would love to hear your own stories as well, of where you connect and resonate. So I really didn't know what scriptures to choose, and Jan volunteered to do the children's time and told me she was going to focus on Jonah. And I said, sure, let's read a passage from Jonah. And just a couple of days ago, as I was sitting with the story of Jonah, I thought about my grandfather. My parents' mantelpiece now looks like this. There's a folded American flag in a case, and a photograph of my dad's father, Claude, along with his honorable discharge papers and some medals, or I don't even know the right word for these insignia, these things. My grandfather, Claude, was the third oldest out of 10, 11, 12, I should have looked it up again, I forget, at least 10 children. By the time World War II happened, he had dropped out of school to help care for his younger brothers and sisters because, as all the stories I've heard go, his father was pretty much no good. He really had a strong sense of responsibility and love for his family. And yet, in October of 1942, he was drafted and pulled away from that family that he loved and was working hard to care for. As far as I know, he did not want to go, but he went. My granddad died when I was 5 years old. I really don't have any actual memories of him, so everything I'm telling you is information that I've heard second or third hand, and so it's the things that I've inherited and the legacy that I carry, but not my own particular experience or memory. But Granddad became he was a mortar man in a heavy weapons company in the Pacific. The one story that came to me as I was sitting with the story of Jonah and these questions about our nation's anniversary and my place as a Mennonite in America is the only story I believe I have heard from Granddad's experience in World War II. Granddad was a cook for his group of soldiers, his company, or whatever the right word is. And one day, some aides to a general came to him, to the kitchen, or to him, and said that there were some visiting VIPs coming to visit the general, and that they were looking for steaks to serve to the VIPs. And my granddad, Claude, told them, They could not have the stakes. The stakes were for the enlisted men, and he was not going to hand them over. That's the end of the story I heard. I don't know what the consequences were. I don't know if they claimed the stakes anyway. I don't know if he got in trouble. His discharge papers say honorable discharge, so he didn't get thrown out of the Army for it. Maybe he wanted to, I don't know. But that's the only story I've heard. And it's completely different for an American empire fighting fascism to draft my grandfather and send him into the army than it is for Jonah to be called by God and not want to go on a message and a mission from God. And yet something about those two stories resonated for me this week. Something about them was just sounding some similarities or some calls or some energy for me. And it's different for Granddad to say, you can't have this doesn't belong to you, than it is for Jonah to go and proclaim judgment. And yet I think both of them were speaking a truth that called to justice. I don't know day to day exactly what all of that means to me. And yet I resonate so much with the songs that Gordon picked this morning about a kingdom of gods that we can't be silent about a revolutionary welcome table that includes everyone. I think that we are called, as both Jesus and Jonah were, to speak truth to power. I think that I am called to speak truth to power in some way. And so far that hasn't meant traveling to Washington, D.C., but it might. So far I haven't had the courage even to go to Topeka, to the State House, but I might find it. But there's something I see differently now on my parents' mantelpiece in that folded flag. I think I have felt uncomfortable over recent years when I go and see that, and I connect it with a spirit of Christian nationalism, which I could tell you other stories of how I did grow up with some of those messages, and my dad does send me horrible forwarded emails from PragerU and things that I don't appreciate. But now I think that I can look at the photo of my granddad, who didn't want to be in that uniform and didn't want to be representing that flag far away, and hear again this story of him standing up to the power. We're not perfect human beings. We aren't perfect communities. And yet we are called to be peacemakers and justice speakers and truth tellers. We're called to be courageous. No one of us is called to do everything, but all of us are called to do something. I believe that. I don't know what your something is, and I'm still finding my something. But thank you for being in community with me. And I would love to hear your connections to my story or your challenges to my story or your own stories as well as we continue to walk as Christians, as Mennonites, as Anabaptists, as a community, and as Americans in this time and place. Thanks.